So yes, another busy week in Royal Land. I mean, at some point we'll do this podcast and there'll be nothing to talk about, but certainly not yet.
No, certainly not this week.
So welcome. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much for all your views. They continue to amaze us that you're tuning in. And of course, you can get this podcast on any podcast platform. So the producers tell me, just search Royal Rota ITV and subscribe, and then you can get it every week, because why would you want to miss a second of what's going on at the moment?
A lot.
Yes. So you do your rundown, Robinson's Royal Rundown, and this might take a while this week because, you know, Harry and Meghan left, there's coronavirus all over the royal family. Well, kind of.
Well, hang on. Hang on.
They're trying not to get coronavirus,
yes.
More accurately. Camilla's been giving speeches. Harry and Meghan did their final tour. Prince Harry's been...
You're not going to leave me much to do on my roundup if you keep going.
Go.
So, yeah, first off, as you say, we've seen a slight change in how the royal family have been meeting and greeting people this week due to coronavirus. There's been less shaking of hands, which we'll chat about. And then, of course, we had the farewell tour from the Sussexes. So this is they returned to the UK from Canada for a final flurry of engagements before they have returned to Canada. And
that's it, done, gone, bye.
That's it.
Right.
And officially, obviously, March the 31st is their final date.
Talk about what happened in the Commonwealth service, etc.
But yes, we had their final flurry of engagements. Prince Charles was at the Prince's Trust Awards, which is obviously a cause very close to his heart. And the Duchess of Cornwall gave a very important speech on domestic violence at the opening session of the Women of the World Festival in London.
Prince Harry was caught making a hoax phone call. Can I add that to your list?
You can add that to my
actually,
list.
just before we came into the studio, Prince William
was made patron of the London Air Ambulance charity, which obviously he's got a lot of knowledge of, having been a pilot himself. Yeah.
Not in London. But anyway, we can talk about all that. Let's start with coronavirus. I mean, the whole world's talking about coronavirus, and rightly so at the moment, but a significant change. I think we were in here last week, weren't we, when the Queen was wearing gloves at an investiture at Buckingham Palace. Everyone thought, oh, she's wearing them inside. That's new. This week, she's received people in audience, not touched their hands. There was the Sri Lankan High Commissioner came to see her.
She had an audience with them, and there was no shaking of hands there.
No touching going on there. And then obviously Prince Charles, and it was fascinating actually, the pictures of Prince Charles. He got out of the car, he immediately went to shake the hands at the Prince's Trust Award of the Lord Lieutenant of Greater London. And suddenly realised, he went, oh, actually, nope, can't do that.
Can't do that. So there's been a lot of namaste.
Namaste. And he went all down the line. So Anton Deck, every celebrity on that list. There was Piers Brosnan, there was, comedians, there were actors, actresses, TV stars. Namaste to everybody, wasn't it?
And he also referred to it, he gave a speech yesterday at the Prince's Trust Awards where he said, due to circumstances, as you know, beyond our control, we are not joined by as many of those who would make such an immense difference to my trust internationally as we had originally planned. So that's his way of referring to the fact that people maybe cannot travel because of coronavirus.
Of course, and actually barely anyone is travelling at the moment, are they? And I mean, it's hitting the travel industry massively hard. And actually Prince Charles and Camilla, both in their 70s, we should remind ourselves, and that's the most at-risk group when it comes to coronavirus. They're still planning, as we record this, they're still planning next week to get on a plane, fly to Bosnia, or he is, and then he's going to be joined by the Duchess of Cornwall in Cyprus, and then they're going to go to Jordan and then come all the way back again.
And as you say, as it stands, they are going to travel. They're following advice. But as we know, the royal family does attract crowds and groups of people, which is obviously one of the things that governments are trying to avoid in the spread of this disease. So I guess they'll be taking serious advice on whether they should go ahead.
We're all trying to hold back on our human-to-human interaction. The royal family do quite a lot of interactions, walkabouts and meeting dignitaries and all the rest of it. I mean, we've already had a case in the UK government, haven't we, where a minister has been tested positive for coronavirus. Lots of questions then about, who was she with, and she was in Downing Street, she was in the House of Commons. So therefore, I mean, if any member of the royal household, be that from a footman in Buckingham Palace all the way up to the Queen, it could be quite a serious situation.
Yeah, and the Queen, who's, not far off 94, is due currently to go to Cheshire next week, and we know how many people she attracts when she goes anywhere. So I think they will be following advice very closely.
But at the moment, that visit to Cheshire with the Queen is still going on.
Yep.
Coronavirus hasn't stopped that. So, I mean, I think the Prince Charles tour, maybe they're just monitoring the situation day by day. But given that, Italy's had a massive shutdown, Ireland's had a massive shutdown, I wouldn't be surprised if something changes on that tour.
Yeah.
We don't know about it at the moment, and I'm not suggesting it will happen, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if there were any significant
programme changes.
Changes. Just to remind people that he's going to Bosnia. There's the 25th anniversary of the Srebrenica massacre. He's also in Sarajevo. Then he's going to Cyprus, where he's going to go to the buffer zone between the, the Greek side and the Turkish side. Then to Jordan, meets the King, meets the Queen of Jordan. I mean, that's a lot of people to meet. A lot of
he's away for over a week.
Yeah.
With a very packed schedule. I think they've got 51 engagements across the tour. So,
okay, we will see what happens with it. So, coronavirus for now, other than namasteing, is everything's going on as normal. And actually, the Prince did the same. There was an engagement today, wasn't there, at Buckingham Palace and investiture when he was the same thing.
We saw a moment at the Commonwealth Day service, which we'll talk about later, where Prince Harry said hello to Craig David with I think we're calling it an elbow pump.
Yes, an elbow pump, which is the other way to greet people at the moment. Do you want to talk about Commonwealth Day service now? But it seems to be the biggest event of the week, and it was Harry and Meghan's last. Or shall we rewind to the sort of farewell tour?
Farewell tour. Shall we do it in order?
Let's do it in order. Okay, so last week we spoke about the return of Meghan Markle, as it were, or the return of the Duchess of Sussex when they went to the Endeavour Fund Awards. There was an absolutely cracking picture that has been everywhere now.
By Samir Hussain. It was an amazing picture.
Samir Hussain did a fantastic picture under the umbrella, the rain bouncing off, the couple
the rain all lit up. It was
looking
beautiful.
At one another. Then the Friday was Harry at Silverstone.
And now the reason I wasn't with you
Why were you not at
Silverstone was because the Duchess had a very secret visit to a school in Dagenham.
Right. And you didn't even tell me where you were going.
I didn't even tell you
where
where
are you going?
going.
I was at Silverstone with Prince Harry. And I said, so where are you going this afternoon? And you just sent me a sort of an emoji of some sort of
me
secret...
commando rolling into an engagement. Yeah.
And actually, as we now know, you were commando rolling all the way to Essex, to Dagenham.
Dagenham, to an upper school there. And this was so secret that I didn't even find out where we were going until 2 hours before I needed to be there. I knew.
Tell us how that happens then, because obviously we were aware that we had to go and film. That's why I knew that you were off to film it. I just didn't know where you were going. And what did you get? Like some sort of secret communication passed under the table, or is it basically just an email saying please go here?
I can't comment. It's self-destructed as soon as I'd read it. But yes, this was kept very under wraps, and that's partly because the visit itself was embargoed until Sunday, which was International Women's Day, which was the point in the visit.
So you do a visit on Friday afternoon for Sunday's International Women's Day, but what happens when you've got a school in Essex that's surrounded by police cars and your TV camera, presumably, and you, and suddenly a few people on social media start filming the arrival of the Duchess of Sussex? I mean,
so even the
you don't want to keep that
school
quiet.
Kids and didn't know what was going on, who was coming. They'd just been told there was a special guest coming to see them for International Women's Day. But yes, it did attract a lot of attention. There were, police vehicles around the car, so people were aware something was going on.
Some of it made it into the sort of some online coverage, didn't it? But
I think anyone that was sort of attracted to see what was going on and got very grainy images. Everything inside the school did hold until the Sunday.
It did hold until the Sunday, and they didn't see what you saw, which was Meghan inviting the head boy, was it, Aker, up onto stage?
Yeah.
And in his best sort of London accent, which I can only have a go at, he
don't.
hugged Meghan and said, she's really beautiful in it. Wasn't it? Something like that?
Yeah. So Meghan...
Should we have a listen to it?
Let's have a listen to it.
Right, let's have a listen to this. So Meghan introduces, says, is there a brave boy who wants to come up onto the stage? Have a listen to how this unfolded.
I'm gonna go off the cuff here because I do think what's really key, if there is one brave young man in this room who wants to come and say what he thinks the importance of International Women's Day is, I know there's gonna be one of you.
She really is beautiful, isn't it?
And Lizzie spoke to Aker afterwards, yeah?
I did, yeah. So the visit itself, she was there for just over an hour. She visited different groups of kids in classrooms. One were looking at their sort of favourite female writers and poets. Another group were a debating society. She did a walk through the school where kids lined sort of a little courtyard, and they were really, really excited. I mean, the squealing was very noisy.
I read something, I mean, it might be someone you spoke to, but there's one girl who said, Meghan is my absolute, utter idol. I had no idea who was getting out of the car. And then suddenly, oh my God, it was Meghan.
Yeah, the kids were, some of them were genuinely emotional. But the little girl you're talking about is Fiona, I think, who's 11. And she gave Meghan the flowers when she arrived. And she said she had no idea who it was getting out of the car, and she said that Meghan is her absolute idol, and it was, the best surprise.
So let's hear. I think we should hear from both Aker and Fiona then, shall we?
Yeah.
Because you interviewed both of them.
Yeah.
So let's hear from Aker first, the boy who went on stage and thought Meghan was really beautiful in it, and also Fiona who met Meghan as she got out of the car.
Yeah.
I've never been in such a space where I'm with people that have been on TV before, so still is surreal, but I really am inspired by the fact that Her Duchess of Sussex could even come down today and be with us and talk about how much it means, the day of International Women's Day, how much it means to us and how much it means to her. So I was inspired today.
Yeah, and the school seemed very, very excited.
Yeah, we were.
It was a big surprise.
It was. I wasn't aware until this morning, so I was like, oof. I wasn't aware this was even going to happen. I didn't know I was even going to speak, so I was very pleasantly surprised today.
She's like my biggest idol, so it was the best. At first, when she came out, I could see her hair, so I thought it was going to be Kate. But then when I saw her face, I was like, oh my God, that's Meghan. I'm actually going to meet Meghan. So yeah, I was really happy. Never before this, you've never got black people into the royal family. And to me, it's so lovely to know that she's like in the royal family. I think it was just lovely to hear her voice just in person, because when her wedding was on TV, like you would hear her, but you'd never think that you'd actually meet her. So to meet her was really fantastic.
So some impressive kids. You thought they were impressive?
I have to say, the kids at Robert Clack Upper School were really impressive. They spoke, as you probably can tell from those interviews, really eloquently about what the Duchess of Sussex meant to them and her role in the royal family or out of the royal family, the work that she's been doing, but also like what International Women's Day means to them. I thought they were incredibly impressive.
And I wonder whether Meghan will have a relationship with that school, very not dissimilar to the one that Michelle Obama had. What was it called? The Elizabeth Garrett Anderson School or something. She came over with President Obama, as he was then in 2009, had a real impact on this school and kept that relationship going.
She's been back, hasn't she?
Yeah, and I wonder whether Meghan will keep that up. I wouldn't be surprised if she did somehow.
Yeah. I have to say,
on her very sort of rare visits to the UK, because we don't think they're going to be very often, do we?
Yeah. I have to say, you did see again how we've talked previously about how Meghan really researches the visits that she's doing and the people that she's meeting. When you could tell on this visit she had done her homework, from the moment she got out the car.
I've always thought that about Meghan. She always does her homework. She really knows.
She knew the headmaster had been a former pupil. I mean, she was very aware of who she was meeting and their links to the school.
She's very impressive. And then, so that was the Sunday, International Women's Day, and then Monday was the final day.
We also had Saturday when they were at the
You've mentioned Saturday, yes, actually, because we're out of sync, because you went there on Friday.
But it was for Sunday.
For Sunday.
Yeah.
OK, some great pictures on the Saturday evening.
Yeah, of them arriving at the Royal Albert Hall for the Mountbatten Festival of Music. And of course, Harry was in his... he was there in his role as Captain General of the Royal Marines.
Soon to
in
be
his
relinquished
military dress.
Role of Captain General on the 31st of March when everything changes.
Yeah.
Kind of the last time we'll see him in that dress, unless he rejoins the royal family, of course. Who knows what will happen in the future.
From people that were there, it seems like he looked quite emotional. We know the significance of the military to Harry and, his involvement in it. So.
And this festival is for military bands, isn't it? So,
exactly.
OK, so it's a Saturday, then Sunday, and then Monday was Commonwealth Day service, where the whole royal family were all together. Now, we were all anticipating a moment not dissimilar to last year's, when they all arrive in the ascending order of seniority. So Harry and Meghan, William and Kate, Charles and Camilla, and then the Queen.
Yep.
And if you take part in the Queen's procession from the entrance door, is it the Great West Door?
Yeah.
All the way through the nave, through the choir, the Q-U-I-R-E choir, all the way down to the royal family seating area. You have to hang about in that sort of entrance hall.
And for the last 2 years, we've seen all of them gather as they wait for the Queen, and people have looked at the body language between them all, and I think this year we were expecting the same, to be able to see what that body language was like. It's the first time we've seen them all together since Harry and Meghan announced that they wanted to depart from
and they decided,
their roles.
no, we ain't doing that this year. We're going to have a change. So Harry and Meghan and William and Kate both arrived and went straight down to their seats. However, in the order of service at the church, William and Kate were meant to be in the Queen's procession. Just Harry and Meghan were meant to go down to their seats, and I think they obviously realised that would look really bad, like a snub to Harry and Meghan. So it even changed between the printing of the order of service and the actual.
And Buckingham Palace said, this changes year to year, but there was obviously a plan at one point for the Cambridges to accompany the procession, which was very slim this year. It was just the Queen, the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall. Yeah,
in the end, that was all it was, because they all went down to their seats. Now, Harry engaged Prince Edward, Uncle Edward, in a very deep conversation. Him and Meghan were having a chat. So when William and Kate arrived, everyone was focusing on the body language. There was the briefest of waves from Meghan to Kate.
Hello, yes, but not much more than that.
And some of the newspapers had not body language experts, they had lip readers.
Lip readers, yeah.
And now, who knows what they said, whether the lip readers are even accurate, but apparently Harry said something like it. He only said hello and that was it, and there was no other words.
I have no idea how they could tell. Their mouths hardly moved.
Well, exactly. These are either very good lip readers or they just made the whole thing up.
I mean, I have no idea how they managed to tell what they were saying.
But clearly that was a key moment, wasn't it? Was the body language. That clearly wasn't much conversation going on between the brothers.
And I thought
and
Harry particularly looked pretty pensive,
thoughtful
during that service. Meghan looked, she sort of smiled throughout, but Harry definitely looked.
She had her sort of game face on, didn't she? Throughout,
she did.
She was pretty much the only one smiling. Everyone else looked pretty sort of serious and sober for the service. So we should remind people it's a service for the 54 nations of the Commonwealth, and then there's one every year. But when there's one next year, there's going to be 2 seats missing.
There are, yeah.
Harry and Meghan won't be there.
They won't. So that's the end of
an era.
Yeah.
And then they all walked out. I mean, you mentioned earlier there was Harry elbow bumped Craig David. Yep. They had a chat all down the line. But Harry and Meghan's departure, there was no big wave, big fanfare. And as far as we understand, although Buckingham Palace won't comment on travel plans at all, they came out of the Westminster Abbey, got in their car and went to Heathrow.
Yeah, well, they've, as we know, they left Archie back in Canada, so I'm sure they were keen to get back to be reunited with him.
Harry had been without his son for nearly, 2 weeks or a week and a half. Meghan had been away for 5 days or so I think they were desperate to get back. So
and the other role, we talked about Harry having to give up Captain General of the Royal Marines, but the other role he'll give up is his Commonwealth role as Youth Ambassador. So they retain President and Vice President of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, but he loses his Youth Ambassador for the Commonwealth.
And then the book closes on the chapter or the actual. We've written the final chapter. That's it.
I think it's a new book.
It's a new book now, isn't it? A new book.
And you spoke to the Secretary General of the Commonwealth.
Yes, and she was Baroness Scotland was talking about the Harry and Meghan's future. Clearly didn't want to comment on it in any, but I think Baroness Scotland, who's the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, basically said, as one ending happens, there is always a new beginning, and she was very diplomatic in her language. Now, after they left, we then sort of found out there were some other visits that Meghan did as she tied things up. But there was a National Theatre visit. Yeah,
so this was
and it kind of got released on the same day as a speech that Camilla was making
controversial. Yeah, so as I said earlier, one of the reasons for Meghan's visit to the school being kept under wraps until the Sunday was because the Duchess of Cornwall had a very big and important speech at the Women of the World Festival on domestic violence. So that day was supposed to be kept clear for Camilla's speech, and then it emerged later in the day some photographs of Meghan's visit to the National Theatre, where she's patron, were released to the newspapers, and that visit had actually happened the day before on the Thursday. So there was
some newspapers thought that therefore that meant that Meghan was trying to overshadow Camilla's speech. It didn't really feel like that to me, but perhaps because the thing at the National Theatre that Meghan was promoting was due to end that weekend, wasn't it? So therefore she wanted to get it as much publicity as possible. But who knows what went on behind the scenes? I got conflicting reports. One, that Meghan had specifically requested that her pictures went in the Evening Standard on that Friday, and therefore, potentially overshadowed Camilla's speech. Others say, look, everyone knew about it. They knew it was going on, and as long as people covered the speech, which was very important.
We will come to that. It's a very important speech.
Why don't you come to it now? Because actually it was a very important speech that Camilla made on domestic violence. Seems like a perfect time to do it.
This was on Friday last week, and it was Camilla's first hashtag, wasn't it?
Yes.
Hashtag everyone's problem.
Hashtag everyone's problem. And actually the silence, it's everyone's problem. It's the women who suffer in silence. It's the people who know it's happening and don't report it. That's why she said hashtag everyone's problem.
Yeah, should we actually play a clip of the speech rather than me saying it? We can play it.
This is what the Duchess of Cornwall said very poignantly about the issue of domestic violence.
3/4 of violence against women happens in a place where a woman should feel safest, her own home. And just imagine, 1 in 4 women in this country will suffer domestic violence in their lifetime. 1 in 4. I find it almost impossible to think that any friend of mine might be living under that horrific threat without my knowing it. But that is the power of coercive control and violence in the home. It is characterised by silence. Silence from those who suffer, silence from those around them, and silence from those who perpetrate abuse. This silence is corrosive. It leaves women, children, and men carrying the burden of shame. It prevents them from speaking out about the abuse, and it prevents them from getting help. And at its worst, it can be fatal.
So that was the Duchess of Cornwall, and as we were saying earlier, we still wait to hear whether she will join her husband on this upcoming tour due to start next week. Now, the other really interesting story this week was Prince Harry getting a phone call, allegedly, from Greta Thunberg and her dad. I mean, from a couple of Russian pranksters who've done it before to other prime ministers and very high-profile people. So Harry should not be singled out for getting caught out by them. But how on earth do you get Harry's landline number or mobile number in Canada and get through and say, hi, it's Greta on the phone, and then engage him in a conversation about very controversial things like President Trump, like climate change? I mean,
I have no idea. I mean, and they managed it twice, I think. Once on New Year's Eve and once in January, on a whole range of issues, like you say, from climate change to leaving the royal family, to losing their titles, to Donald Trump, to Boris Johnson, to Prince Andrew, which he wouldn't comment on. But, there were long conversations with him. And
you kind of wonder whether there's any sort of Russian state help in finding these numbers. But anyway, that's for another podcast for someone.
It does beg the question that, in them stepping away from their roles, how will they be protected? And are they opening themselves up to more things like this?
Yeah, exactly. And everyone sort of criticised the British tabloid press for sort of giving them a hard time. Well, here's an example of a couple of Russian hoaxers who engaged Harry in conversations, not only about climate change, as we say, about the leadership of the world. Harry said there's a lot of sick people leading the world at the moment. So have a listen to the recording made by these couple of Russian pranksters of Harry whilst he was at his new home in Vancouver Island in Canada.
It's not an easy time, and the world is in a troubled place. And unfortunately, the world is being led by some very sick people. I don't mind saying this to you guys. I think the mere fact that Donald Trump is pushing the coal industry so big in America he has blood on his hands, because the effect that has on the climate and on the island nations far, far away, again, out of sight, out of mind.
So anyway, if you do manage to get through to Prince Harry in Canada, then you can always send the recording to this podcast, and we'll have a very careful listen to what he has to say. Anyway, and as you say, Lizzie, I think that's obviously throwing forward to their new life, which they're kind of now in. Nothing officially changes until March the 31st, but they've left the UK. We don't think they'll be back a great deal, to be fair.
No.
You know, the new life has pretty much begun. Is how they're going to keep it secure.
Yeah, and I think security is going to be one of the big questions going forward. Who pays for their security? How much security do they have?
Yeah.
How are
Canada
they protected?
aren't paying.
Yeah.
So we still think they're having, for the time being at least, British-funded police protection officers. I mean, you know, the Canadians have said they're going to stop paying at the end of March. So,
but I think there are going to be, in the coming weeks before that 31st of March date, I think we will hear some more announcements around their future going forward.
And I mean, I had a conversation with somebody who knows what's going on about Harry and Meghan's future, and I think, you know, it's fair to say that you know, we can expect them to be throwing themselves into activism, to being philanthropic, to supporting charities, to engaging, as it was put to me, with people of a different generation and a different demographic that the royal family normally engage with. So in other words, you know, younger people and more diverse people. And that's kind of what Harry and Meghan have got planned for their new life. Whenever and however they announce it, we don't know.
Yeah, I don't think the causes that we've seen them show particular interest in will change. You know, military, young people, education, women. I think they'll continue those themes. It's just how they do it is still up in the air.
So much to come on that particular one. Should we wrap up with Prince William?
Yep,
I mean,
so
it's quite nice. I mean, he flies helicopters. He knows how to do first aid. In fact, he's spoken about some of the mental health challenges that first responders or paramedics experience by going to road traffic accidents and all the rest of it. And he's now become the patron of the London Air Ambulance.
He has. And you're right, he's seen the impact of those first responders from when he flew helicopters for the East Anglia Air Ambulance. Tongue twister. And they say that he'll, you know, continue to champion those on the front line with this new role. So.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, I mean, the air ambulance in London, particularly with the, you know, there is a real problem with the number of stabbings on the streets of London at the moment, and the air ambulance have to go to these things all the time. William did a visit, didn't he, not that long ago?
Yeah,
on top of, did he fly in?
He did.
He flew in. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
He flew into a hospital where he spoke to them, and actually they were just talking about the number of stabbings that they have to go to, and that's one of the main things they have to deal with at the moment.
Yeah, they were commending him, weren't they, on his keeping in touch with his flight.
Right, so the Harry and Meghan free royal world, which we are now in, begins as of now, unless, of course, they want to make any more news in the coming week. Therefore,
I suspect it's not going to stay totally quiet.
I mean, I think they'll be quiet. I mean, I predict they'll be very quiet until at least the 31st of March when the change happens. I don't think we'll be hearing anything from them until after then, unless there are things that are outside their control, like hoax phone calls. What, therefore, is going to come up in the new Harry and Meghan free royal world next week if coronavirus doesn't stop everything from happening?
So next week, as we've said, Charles is due to go to Bosnia, and then he'll be joined in Cyprus by the Duchess of Cornwall, and the Queen is due to visit Cheshire on Thursday. And the last time she was in Cheshire,
she was with Meghan, and everyone thought this was the Queen showing Meghan how to do it.
Yeah,
yes.
They did. They went up on the train together. She saw the royal train.
And that was like 18 months ago?
Not that long ago.
Not that long ago at all. Wow.
We stood in that very cold, windy field. Do you remember?
Yeah, they were opening a bridge, weren't they?
They were opening
over
a bridge. It was a very cold, windy day. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then they went to Chester?
Yeah.
No, Runcorn. Anyway. God,
she's back, but on her own.
Yeah, but she's Meghan-less when she goes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
that's it so far for next week that I'm allowed to talk about.
Could be very quiet in this new world. And maybe the podcast from here on in will be about
shorter.
6.5 seconds long. Anyhow, so we've digested everything. The new Harry and Meghan free royal world begins from now, but at least until they start announcing things in April. We will, of course, let you know what's going on. You can follow us. Lizzie on Twitter is at
Lizzie ITV.
I'm at Chris Ship ITV. Our Instagram account is at ITV News Royals. All the best picture on there all the time. And we will see you on next week's podcast, or hear from you, or what do you do? No, they don't. They hear us. Anyway,
You'll hear from
however you get to hear this scintillating conversation, be it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, we will do it all again next week.